Let's convert all the remaining endpoints now to use our database and not hard-coded values anymore. Let's move on with the view endpoint, which is probably the easiest one. We need to pass in the database connection, and then afterwards run the select query basically for the ID up here. Let's await it and convert our function to async. Okay, and then let's implement the callback. And now in here we should just query for this Rastasian ID. I'm using the Rastasians table and then find ID, and then afterwards get result. Get result will try to execute the query, and we need to tell it to basically decode the result into a Rastasian struct like this, and we should also pass the connection in here. Not to forget that something could fail, so we need to expect a panic in case something goes wrong. Failed retrieving Rastasian row, and then we simply JSON the result and return this Rastasian struct to the as the response. Of course, we will need to implement the trait, the trait for the Rastasian struct. In order to be able to serialize it, we should implement a serialized trait. It is already there. That's good. Yeah, we need this for the for CRUD to be able to convert this result, this Rastasian struct, into JSON. We already have it from up here, from get Rastasians, so all good. But the compiler complains because it complains about the ownership of ID. Since this callback is something that runs asynchronously and possibly in a different thread, it might be that it definitely needs to consume ID. So we should pass the ownership of ID into this callback function, which means that afterwards down here ID will not be available anymore, but we are fine since we don't really need it. This can be done by using the move keyword for Rust, which basically tells go ahead and grab ownership of all the things that are used into the callback itself. That looks great so far. We didn't need to do many things here. This looks like it should work. Let's move on to the put and update Rastasian endpoint. This one is going to be very similar to the create Rastasian one. We need a way to map our data into, this time it will not be a new Rastasian, but it will be a regular Rastasian struct, since we're expecting an entry that already exists in the database, and just the values will be changed over there. So we expect a full-blown or partial, could be also partial, we could support partial Rastasian entry. At least we need the ID here, and then whatever comes should be mapped into a Rastasian struct. So Rastasian can be a Rastasian struct. Rocket will put everything from JSON data into Rastasian, and then we will need to insert this data into our database. Again, we also need to pass the database connection here. We forgot that. And then db run, as usually await, and async here. Let's make the callback and pass the connection. We're gonna make use of ID, so let's move also ownership in here in the callback. And now let's use diesel to basically run an update statement. Let result be diesel update. There we go. And the source will be the Rastasian stable again. But after we find the entry with ID, the ID that was passed here in any case. And then we are gonna set so in the update statement we're gonna set values for this Rastasian whatever is being passed into the endpoint through the Rastasian variable here. We could do Rastasian into inner to unwrap Rastasian. Okay, I mistyped here. The Rastasian we are being passed here is not straight Rastasian object, but it is a JSON value that wraps Rastasian, exactly like up here. And then we could have Rastasian into inner directly, which means we will pass the values exactly as they are passed into our endpoints to the database. But probably this is not wise. Let's go to our struct again and see what do we want out of these fields to be updatable from our endpoint. I would say we still only need name and email to be updatable. No one should change created at, so created at doesn't make sense to change it in the first place, because that changes the historic value of this record and probably is an abuse of our endpoint, and also ID should definitely not change. So in our endpoint here, I think it would be a good idea to only update specific fields, and that is name and email. To do so, we're gonna use our schema module, and then Rastasian stable, and then we have email, and then this will be mapped to the email value from up here, and that is gonna be Rastasian stable name, also mapped to the value up there from Rastasian. Which is equal, and then equal to values from Rastasian. And Rastasian is a simple struct. So here email, and then down here Rastasian name. Okay. The compiler is complaining about the syntax error. We messed up some parentheses here, I'm pretty sure. Set. Yeah, okay. Probably because we need to use semicolon. Before using semicolon, we should execute this and pass in the connection. And then, of course, we need to, as usual, expect and panic in case something goes wrong. We should also return the JSON of result. It looks a lot better now. We just need to make sure that we are referring to the right things up here. Probably we need to get rid of the table prefix. Okay, yeah. This refers now to the right thing. But here we need to probably take care of the ownership. To owned. Again, here the same. No, to owned. The compiler still complains here. Aha, okay, now here it complains because the Rastasian doesn't have the deserialized trait implemented for now. We only implemented it for the new Rastasian. So let's add deserialize to Rastasian because, yeah, in this case we will accept Rastasian from our endpoint, which means we need to deserialize incoming JSON to a Rastasian struct. Okay, this syntax looks a bit fun, or not very, probably you're not very used to something like this. This is a tuple, Rust tuple. In parentheses we have first element, second element. The first element is the email, the second is the name. We could add more in here, but yeah, for now name and email are enough. And yeah, here is the syntax to say that the first tuple is the email field in the database. That's why we are using the schema module. And then we pick the value from the Rastasian JSON struct here. Yeah, we execute like usual, no changes here. Yeah, that's probably prettier and easier to understand. It is a diesel update statement with some fields to be updated, more or less. Yeah, the result will contain again the number of the affected rows here. Again, not ideal, but yeah, we will fix it later. Finally, we should take care of the delete endpoint. We should pass the database. Here we don't need to worry about any payload, so everything is a lot simpler now. We just db run. We have again an ID, so we should move everything into our callback and along with the ownership. But first let's await and then async this function, move, in the end return status no content, and here we simply have to diesel delete, and the source is gonna be exactly like the update statement source. We're gonna use this find method of the Rastasian table, passing the ID into it, and yeah, of course, again we need to expect and panic in case something goes wrong. I promise I will fix this later. Failed deleting Rastasian entry, and then semicolon. Oh, right. First we need to execute before passing in the connection. It complains about the ID because ID is prefixed now because we do not use it. We also need to change it here in the endpoint definition. And yeah, that should work. If the deletion goes on well, we simply return status no content, and that's it. Nothing more. Okay, looks like that compiler is not complaining for anything. We have some unused things here that were probably included by the editor at some point. Yeah, let's also make this one prettier. Our program now starts shaping up really nicely, which means it is about time to recompile it and start testing it. Let's see how it works and if our CRUD is now operational. Let's cargo run. I'm gonna hide the sidebar, and after compiling is done, I do not see anything out of ordinary, usual stuff. So let's open a new terminal and let's try our view Rastasian endpoint first of all. That was the post command that we ran. Maybe, since we have this here, maybe we should try the updated point first. Out of curiosity, let's try to update our Rastasian number 1. Remember, we inserted 2 Rastasians and both have exact same name and email, but let's try to update our first Rastasian. So we will use the put mod before viewing them. Let's update Rastasian number 1, and yeah, okay, let's just try to update the name, nothing else, right? I'm not sure if this will work. Okay, we got 422 unprocessable entity, probably because we are missing email. Let's go in the Rocket logs and see. Okay, it's missing the ID, so we could pass in the ID, but maybe we can find a better workaround. Let's view it first. Let's just use the view Rastasian endpoint to make sure that this one works, and then I will show you a cool way to make ID not required. Okay, so this is the view endpoint. We will try to view Rastasian number 1, and perfect, it works. Name, email, created that, everything is here. So now that we know that the view Rastasian endpoint works, let's go and try to make ID, and also I suppose create that. We should also make it optional, because here let's add the ID to see what happens if we add the ID. I'm pretty sure Rocket will complain about email then, and then the created at ID is 1. Okay, let's try again. Okay, 422, I suppose. Yeah, it is complaining about email. Okay, let's also specify email, and then it will definitely complain about created at, because CRD expects a fully defined Rastasian struct, and the Rastasian struct is like this, right? ID, name, email, created at. So in order for this to work, we should define everything in our payload, which is, yeah, not nice. We should be able to do partial updates. There we go, 422. Now it complains about created at. We don't only want to do partial updates, but also it doesn't make any sense to specify created at, because we don't want to change created at all. So the update endpoint ID and created at probably make no sense. This should be possible to make it easier on the consumers of our endpoint. This should be possible. We don't need them to have the full object. But yeah, of course, this is a decision up to you. Some people might say that, hey, I want our endpoint, my endpoint, to always receive the full object and nothing less. But yeah, in more pragmatic situations, we don't need useless fields. It just makes life harder for the consumers. And the way to do so, to skip some fields when deserializing with CRD, is by using this attribute. What else? CRD, and then skip deserializing, and then we can do the same for ID. I think this should work. So let's go ahead and recompile and try it out. Okay. Yeah, let's try with just name and email. Okay, looks like it worked. That was great. We got 1, which is the number of affected rows. Remember, update Rastassians. We'll return the result by diesel update. Now it is 1 affected row, so we got 1. But let's view this Rastassian to see how it looks like now in the database. So let's view Rastassian number 1. And let's see, we got ID 1, created at is not touched, perfect. Email here, okay, name is actually different, so name was updated. Let's also try to update the email to make sure that also updating the email works. Great, perfect, yeah, that works really nicely. Let's also view all the records now once more to make sure we have the right things. John Doe 2 and John Doe, the original John Doe with ID 2. Okay, so all looks good. We just need to now try our delete endpoint. Fairly easy. Which Rastassian should we delete? I would say let's delete Rastassian number 1. Okay, I suppose nothing will be returned here. Great. And let's just ping our get Rastassian's endpoint. Now we should have only 1 entry there. Indeed, our entry with ID 1 was deleted. Really nice. Now that we have our entire CRUD up and running, we should probably do some cleanup, right?